legislators that they heard from constituents. There really wasn't much pushback on that emergency funding. And now it's officially passed. It has the signature of Governor Nome, and the Arts Council will receive an additional $250,000 in emergency funding to help the sector. I did speak with Patrick Baker yesterday, and they're still working on the details, the nuances of how that funding will work. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the near future. But I just wanted to tell you all, thank you so much for getting involved and advocating on behalf of this sector. That the funds are needed. We know that this year. So it will be especially helpful to have another injection here, another boost of relief money over the summer. And then I just wanted to thank Andrew for putting this all together and for being our host, and turn it over now to Patrick McGowan.
Great. Thank you, Jim, Andrew, and please share my thanks with Sherry as well. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's great to work with all of you. And also, real quick, thanks to Randy, Ari, and Roseanne for volunteering today. We're going to have a lot of fun. And I just want to make a quick note. Andrew said we're going to do Q&A. This is very interactive. I'm not really presenting a whole lot. I should say I'm not actually lecturing on anything necessarily, but this is an opportunity for us to have a conversation. To kick things off, Andrew, would you go ahead and pin everybody's video for us? So we want Ari, Randy, and Roseanne. And a quick note for everybody too, you're going to see me looking at my lens and at my monitor. And so I may not always be looking at my lens, but I just wanted to do a quick audible to let you know that there are times when I'm talking to you via the lens, and sometimes I'm looking at our monitor. So do we have folks pinned now, Andrew? Perfect. Thank you for that. Let's go ahead and kick things off. Let me just do something on my end, because I don't have our panelists big size on my screen. I think we'll still, I'm just going to change my view. There we go. I'm good. Okay, so this is what I'd like our panelists to do. And we'll start with, we're going to randomly go with, we're going to start with Randy, because he's right in the middle and alphabetically. All right, so Randy, what I'd like you to do is, we're not going to change anything yet, but what I'd like you to do is just go ahead and introduce yourself, name, role, and tell us a little bit about your organization. And yeah, let's just leave it at that. Those three things: where you're located and your organization, how you might introduce yourself and your organization to somebody over Zoom in real life.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Patrick. So good morning, everybody. My name is Randy Niles. I'm the Associate Director of the Black Hills Playhouse. We were formed in 1946, so we're actually rather anxiously awaiting to launch our 75th anniversary season of live theater in Custer State Park.
Great. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you for that. Okay, Roseanne, we're going to go over to you and do the same thing, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Roseanne Hoffland, and I am the Director of Communications and Community Engagement for Levitt at the Falls. Levitt at the Falls is located in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We're an outdoor concert venue and a nonprofit with a mission to build community through music. And we do that through offering a concert season of free outdoor concerts for the Sioux Falls community to enjoy. This summer, that will kick off on June 11th with 40 free concerts from professional musicians of all sorts of different genres and backgrounds this summer.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, Ari, you're up. If you'll go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name's Ariadne Albright. I go by Ari because sometimes that's easier. I'm the Arts Program Coordinator at Sanford Vermillion Medical Center, and I also teach Arts and Health at the University of South Dakota, as well as being a visual artist on the roster of the South Dakota Arts Council.
Wonderful. Perfect. Okay, now I'm gonna have all of you do a couple things with your setup, and then we're gonna come back to this introduction here in a minute. Randy, let's go ahead and start with you. I'd like you to go ahead and elevate are you on a laptop, Randy? I think that's.
Yes, I am.
Okay, so let's go ahead and raise your laptop. And then we want the camera at eye level. And one of the things I want everybody to note is that when we're on a Zoom call, this isn't a phone call with video. So as artists and art administrators, we have an opportunity to really understand. I mean, we come at this understanding that the medium has certain advantages and disadvantages for our use. So Randy, let's go ahead and then close your clamshell about 5 degrees. There, okay, almost there. Let's have you just move forward. There, that's it. Okay, now, and you're framed well, right? So we elevated, we did a tilt, and we did a frame. Roseanne, I think let's go ahead and tilt your clamshell towards you a little bit. And can we do it just a little bit more towards you without closing it all the way? There we go. Already we're seeing an improvement here. Roseanne, let's turn can we turn your laptop, I think over your right shoulder just a little bit. We want to just turn it a wee bit. That way we start using the rule of thirds and we create a composition with our video this way, right? All right, Ari, let's go ahead and raise your laptop. Are you on a laptop?
I am. I feel like I'm sitting too close too. But that just could be my old eyes.
Yeah, but you're looking down at your camera. So I think you're doing okay. We want to start. There we go. And then let's go ahead and close that clamshell just a little bit towards you. There we go. Voila, we got it started. Now, what I'd like you to do is let's talk a little bit about backgrounds. So Ari, I think you've got a busy background, but you're in a great spot. I mean, it's not unlikely that you would actually be meeting with people in this space. And real quick, Andrew, there's a few folks who are looking at the full gallery view. I think if you just go up into the upper right-hand corner of your Zoom window and you see a little button that says view, you can scroll over that. If you click on it, you can see either speaker view, gallery view, and you might have the option for full screen, depending on what platform you're on. But if you're on a laptop, it's that upper right corner to be able to see, and then select gallery view. So Ari, in terms of your background, are there some simple modifications that you might be able to make?
Well, I was just wondering if I just rotated, there is a piece of artwork that we made behind me.
Okay.
It's not super colorful, but maybe it makes
a little bit more sense. Yeah. So now you're framed. We obviously see that you're an artist because you've got the supplies off to your left, but they're not the dominant image. And then you've got a piece of artwork behind you. And then let's go ahead and have you scoot a little closer to the shelf. There you go. Now, the one thing that we may want to do, that we could talk about at some point would be just a little bit of lighting. So if there was a little lighting, well, and then the camera adjusts on its own, right?
Patrick, I'm going to keep playing with it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. All right. So you do that. Roseanne, you've got a little basket in the background for you. So my question is, does that represent the levet? And is there some significance to the levet
Not
with
at
that
all.
basket?
No, those are
Not
my
at all.
little dinner napkins next to my
Okay.
working from home.
So one of the things thank you for that admission.
Yeah.
Do you have a plant or anything that might be able to go? I can barely see it, but I think it's a wine rack. Is that right? So if we put a plant there instead of the basket,
Yes.
can we try that?
Yes.
Great. And then while she does that, Randy, let's close your laptop. Let's close that clamshell just a little bit more. So one of the things that, so my brother Mike is a professional actor out of New York City, and he shared with me, well, one, he's doing all his demo tapes and all his auditions now over Zoom. But the rubric that was coming out of the casting director for for many of the Chicago crime dramas was having everybody eliminate that negative space above their head when they do their video. And so this is why I'm trying to get us to frame this in a way where we're positioned in a way that we can better command the screen. So we're all familiar with being in a room where, our objective, if we're leading the conversation, we're facilitating a meeting or anything along those lines, or we're presenting, then we've heard the phrase and we've practiced this where we want to command the room. And now with Zoom, because it's more than just a phone call with video, we need to have the mindset that we're going to command the screen. And another way of looking at that is we want to make sure our video is watchable. Otherwise, we really don't need it. And we get to take advantage of what video can do for us in terms of creating more connection, more engagement, so that we can have more influence and impact. So Randy, you're framed well. I think you're doing pretty good. What I would say, actually, let's go ahead and raise what I'm noticing though, Randy, is that you're looking down. If you look at the camera for me real quick, can you look at just the camera? Yeah, let's raise your laptop just a little more so you're not looking down at it. Let's raise that camera so that it's right at eye level and that we're able to kind of close that clamshell just enough so that you're looking across. So if you and I were in the same room together or having a conversation across the table, Randy, we literally would be horizontal. It would be a plane across. And that's really what we want to try to accomplish here, is that equanimity between us. I'm not looking down at you. I'm not looking up at you. Any of those, it's really just across. And it's just a much stronger position. Otherwise, you end up, especially if the camera is looking down at you, you end up diminishing yourself in ways unintended. And we just don't want that. So that's looking better, Randy. Can we raise that one more level? Maybe another inch? Ari, you're looking good. I love the artwork in your background. That's really great. I mean, it's a heart. I mean, it's just kind of perfect.
I changed the lighting and put a warm light.
Oh.
I don't know if it's just me, but it's a little bit different.
Yeah, let's go ahead and raise your laptop just another maybe half an inch or an inch. And then we'll close the clamshell another 3 to 4%. Roseanne, that is a great plant, by the way. That's perfect. So while Ari does that, Roseanne, your lighting, you're well lit. You almost are too well lit because all that lighting, it's obviously a ceiling light, or at least I think it is. And it is shining straight down on you. So you're getting because of the type of camera you have, it's kind of blowing you out a little bit from a lighting standpoint. Can we see what you look like without that light on?
Yeah, I can play with the lighting a little bit. And I brought out a ring light that we happen to have in the house
Oh, perfect.
somewhere that we can play with. Again, I don't know that I have the perfect solution to it yet. But
No, we're gonna just play. I mean, this is really the iterative process to get ourselves set up. But once we get ourselves set up, then it's repeatable. And then there you go, Ari. Randy, looking a lot better. Now I can tell that you're looking at the monitor rather than the camera. Can you look at the camera, Randy? Okay. And if you need to, get a sticky note that says, look here with an arrow pointing to the camera on your laptop. You would be surprised how many people find that to be like one of the most helpful suggestions I make, because we want to know where the camera is. It's funny to find out the number of people who don't.
I believe it. I totally believe it.
Right?
Are you recommending that when we talk, we look at the camera?
Yes, actually. So when it's your turn, particularly if you're presenting, it's a little different when you're having a conversation with somebody. And so it all kind of depends on the venue, and whom you're speaking with. So for family Zoom, I'm on an iPad. I don't worry about my angles. I'm a little less worried about the lighting. I might be, cooking in the background. But that's family Zoom, that's casual. So my grandma Sylvia used to say, you have to dress for the dignity of the occasion. And she would always bring that phrase up because we would beg, back in the day, we would beg to wear something other than khakis to the South Dakota Symphony. Right? So, but she was right. And the same is true with our Zoom meetings. Right? We don't always have to be in presentation mode, but when it really matters, when we're really trying to create that connection with somebody, we want them to know that we're trying to connect with them. And the way we do that is for them to be able to see our eyes. And then we just need to set ourselves up to be able to see peripherally what's going on in our monitor. But when we trust our message and we trust ourselves, we have a greater likelihood of being able to create that influence and impact without needing to look specifically at the monitor. So Andrew, I think you were going to jump in here.
Yeah. Hey, Patrick, just while we're kind of still on the topic of backgrounds, one question that has come up is, do you have any kind of opinion or best practices for virtual backgrounds, whether that's with or without a green screen, versus cleaning up the background of the room you're in? Yeah.
So my preference is to create the background that helps to tell your message. That's the broad macro level view for backgrounds, because we need to do some level of production design, some level of staging for what for who we are and who we represent. So that's the principle. In terms of virtual backgrounds, I'm not a big fan of virtual backgrounds because most people don't do them well, even with a green screen. And then they end up becoming more distracting than useful. They might be useful to the person with it because they're trying to obscure something in the background, which may be a necessity. So if you're going to do a virtual background, the first rule is you have to use a green screen. If you're going to do a virtual background, and you've got to get your Zoom set up in a way that you don't end up accidentally achieving the Van Gogh effect. I call it the Van Gogh effect because we've all been on calls where somebody's lost an ear because of their virtual background. And so we just want to make sure that that doesn't happen, because that ends up being more distracting. I've seen very few people actually do virtual backgrounds in a way that wasn't distracting. And it takes away from the message, and ultimately takes away from the person who's trying to deliver that message. And so then you diminish and you reduce your ability to create that impact and that influence. Was there another quick question, Andrew?
I think it'll probably be something for later. When you talk about your setup, Patrick, the other question was asking about shallow depth of field and how you're
Oh,
getting
yeah.
some of that effect. So we can hold that until you talk a little bit more about your setup, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let me just check my notes here. I think the thing that we're also trying to do over video is recognize that, how do I want to say this? We want to be careful that we're not using the term authenticity to be a synonym for mediocrity. We want to bring our whole selves, all of that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we want to or necessarily should be leaving these things up to chance. We may need to elevate, we may need to upgrade our camera equipment. One of the things that I've learned in this process is it's a lot easier to position a camera when it's not attached to the laptop, particularly if you need to use your laptop in presentation mode. And so what ends up happening is our laptop becomes a Swiss Army knife where the blade, the scissors, and the corkscrew are all open at the same time. And we're trying to cut something, open something, and slice something, and it just, none of those tools work as effectively when they're all open than when you can divide and conquer. And so I think going into 2021, let me ask a quick question of our audience and even of our panelists. This is kind of a two-part question. Let's ask the first question. How many times per week are you currently on a video call? And Andrew and Jim, feel free to chime in on this.
Yeah, I'm on, well, at least twice a week just for some standing meetings, and it's usually averaging probably a half dozen every week. Some of the chat coming in, we're getting, 6 times, 1 to 2, 3, 5 times or more. So, pretty much everyone has at least a handful every week.
Yeah, and Ann Tacker even said 8 to 10 going forward, a lot more. Jim, you were going to chime in?
Yeah, I was just going to say, at least 4 to 6 a week, it seems like. And
yeah,
maybe this is for later in your presentation, but I suspect that that's not going to necessarily just stop here over the summer. So that was the other thing that that occurs to me as you talk about how often we're on calls.
Yeah, Randy, Roseanne, Ari, how many times are you on a Zoom call or something similar?
4 to 6, easily. Up to 10 hours a week, I would say.
10 hours a week. That's a lot.
Yeah, I'm at probably 8 to 10 per week right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's usually quite the range. It can be 2, it can be 6.
Yeah. And I think to your point, Jim, our reality is that these aren't going to go away. We've all been thrown into the deep end of virtual meetings. I know a lot of people in 2020 who literally waited to do anything in terms of their video setup for a lot of reasons, just to kind of see if this was going to stick around. Was this a blip because it was the pandemic, or is this now the new normal? And what we're finding is that this is really going to, with all the remote work, remote teams, we're finding that this is the new normal. But also, I think what people are realizing is that we can accomplish just as much on video as we can in person. We can have just as much influence on video as we can in person. And we can be effective, and it's also more efficient. The first time I set up my whole desk and everything, I've got a digital camera on a tripod, and I've got a standing desk with a crank. I just got a Husky desk from Home Depot with a manual crank, and it took me all of like 5 minutes to convert my station for the first time over to a standing desk. And I was just like, man, wait a minute, it was only 5 minutes. My commute used to be 20. What am I complaining about? I just literally got a half hour back. I could change my I could change my configuration, 4 times a day and still not, I'm still more efficient with video than I am. And that's just, I mean, that's the low hanging fruit example, right? Because we don't have to drive somewhere. So absolutely. The second question I have for everybody is, in what ways are you utilizing, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, anything along those lines? And are you doing any live streams? And if you are or aren't, or maybe you've been invited to one, are you live stream ready? Because where Zoom is and I'll just kind of throw that out there, people can throw that in the chat or in the Q&A. Would love to hear from our panelists, Jim and Andrew. Are you doing any live streams, or have you had opportunity or been invited to do some live streams?
Well, I'll just jump in and say, yeah, we've done a few, and I always feel like I'm live stream ready because I work with Andrew, so who's right here in the box right next to me. He's really good at this stuff. So no, we have done a few, and it does seem like it's kind of becoming more common with our work.
Yeah. And I think, we've been lucky in that a number of our live streams have been pre-recorded that are then live streamed out, which really simplifies the technical aspect of just your internet capability, your bandwidth, things like that. But what we've been able to do then is then be very, very participatory. So, when the JAS Quintet live streamed a pre-recorded performance, we were all able to be in the chat, talking with people, interacting the entire time throughout the concert. And then also, I think that was the one thing I was going to say too, is as a musician, I'm finding, in addition to the Zoom meetings not going away, another big thing that just isn't going away is that video connection. Seeing more and more artists and musicians that are doing live Q&As with their patrons and with their fans. It's many places are starting to allow you to do grant applications over video, so you're able to really connect and be a real person with them in a way that you can't necessarily do just sending in a proposal for a call for art. You might now be able to do a video, and being able to set your equipment up like this allows you to do both with the same gear, which is really helpful.
Yeah, exactly. And so, Zoom, I mean, there's a very thin line between a live stream and a Zoom meeting, if you think about it. And so, to your point, Andrew, whether it's, I look at Zooms and I know that there's a reluctance to use the word sales, but it's really a point of sale, right? It's where we're establishing a relationship. We're all in the relationship business, but in many ways it's a point of sale. And when you don't have a good Zoom presence, I kind of equate it to the idea of Tide being on the shelf at Target with a black and white label. If you haven't invested in your Zoom presence or did a little bit of a level up from a technology standpoint, it's basically the black and white label rather than the full color, and trying to draw people in. We're all challenged, whether it's a live stream or a Zoom, we're all challenged to get people's attention. And quite frankly, we've got about 8 seconds to get people's attention. And then we have to, what are we doing to keep people's attention? And I continue to hear from several people, and I finally found a quote that actually fits, and it's when they're talking about video, the opposite of good is off. So we're all conditioned. We have to remember we're all conditioned with 4K videos being streamed over Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney, everybody. Not that we have to reach to that caliber, but recognize that influences our ability, everybody's ability to really pay attention. So what are we doing? We got to bring a little bit of the show and a little bit of the magic to what we do on video. And it just begs for the fact that we need to be intentional, right? And we're going to be deliberate. We can't do this accidentally anymore going forward. Even if we drop the total number per week of videos that we're doing or Zoom calls, then we got to make each one count. And it has to align with our in-person presence as much as, so there's got to be some level of alignment between our in-person presence and our video presence as we go forward. I think there's a few things in the chat that I'm looking at. Great. I appreciate all that, the interaction there. That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, we're bringing the arts to streaming. Who knew we were going to do that, a year ago, right? I mean, this is kind of phenomenal, and to be able to, what did you say yesterday, Roseanne? What you had to make? How many decisions, or what? The compression of change that you experienced over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, my reflection of this time, because the Levitt had to go fully digital in the last year, as many arts organizations have, which is something that was always part of our long range plan. But essentially what it felt like is that we made essentially 10 years of technology progress in 3 months. In terms of how quickly we all had to pivot and figure out what the technology was and how we could bring it to a professional level and still represent our brand well. So it's been a learning curve, I think, and I don't think that's unique to the Levitt. I think that's been the arts industry across the board.
Yeah, that's great. And to have been able to pivot that way so quickly is really to your credit and to the credit of the organization as well. So congratulations on that. Andrew, any other quick questions that you see?
No, the only thing just a couple of real quick things that have come up in the chat, just that I'd like to share with the whole group in case you missed it, was just, for live streaming, many people are using Zoom as their platform, but then connecting it to Facebook, YouTube. You can do that straight from within Zoom. That's a nice way, since we're all kind of accustomed to being squares in this box. So it's an easy way to get your performers or yourself ready to go, but still live stream out. And then one other thing that Judy mentioned, and hi Judy, good to have you with us, is when they've done some live performances, they've had a sound man, which has been incredibly helpul, not only for the audio, but she called him as being a hype man, so that at least they had one person applauding after all the tunes. Because as a performer, we want that feedback from the audience. Is this going
That's
well?
great.
I don't even know. And what I've found being on Zoom calls or doing these webinars or presenting on webinars, especially webinars where the vast majority of the people aren't on camera, it can feel like speaking into the void. And so oftentimes I'll try to leave my video on for the presenter and be very performative, very much nodding my head, yes, oh, good point, just to feel like there's some human relationship happening. And I will say that honestly, that's almost more exhausting, or not more, that's just as exhausting as presenting, because it feels like I'm an introvert and now I'm like being big and bold, and I was in the pit, I wasn't on stage for the theater performances, but that's one thing that's been really helpful, I feel, is to have someone that can just be nodding along and giving some of those cues.
Yeah, and I'm going to build on that too, Andrew. One of the things I've recommended to folks, particularly if they're teaching or presenting, because it is unfamiliar when you're looking at the camera, and we're going to come back to our panelists and have them do their introduction again, but I'm going to add a couple things to that introduction. But real quick, what I mention is if you can have a wingman, if you would, a right hand, who's going to be watching the chat or watching for you, in those, particularly if you're presenting, right? Because I have found even when I'm presenting live, I'm kind of in a zone anyway, and it's hard to present and sort of peripherally pull in anything more than maybe the energy of the room. And having somebody who can really kind of, I would intervene a little bit or provide you an opportunity to pause and take a couple questions or something along those lines. For some professors, what I've recommended is that you assign a student who's going to moderate the class. And then because a lot of, I have my niece is actually a university professor, and what she actually has hybrid classes now because of COVID. And it's a little frustrating, but if she assigned one of the students in the class to moderate, it would actually provide that level of interaction without her needing to try to read what's on a chat, see who's on the screen, and pay attention to a class at the same time. It's almost too much. It's almost, I mean, it's virtually impossible to do all of that well or seamlessly without a lot of practice. Being on video takes practice anyway, but to be able to manage all of that on your own takes a bit. So I think even assigning a student or somebody to be the moderator can go a long way in terms of our work on video. And then I'm not forgetting the question, Jim, on my setup. Let me go back to our panelists real quick. Ari, let's go ahead and close your clamshell just a little bit, because as you lean back, and this is a great example. So one of the things to note is your laptop or webcam, whether it's attached to your if it's built into your laptop or sits on top of your monitor, is a wide angle lens. And so what's going to happen with a wide angle lens is if you get too far away from the camera, I mean, literally it can be a foot difference. If you get a foot away from your camera, you're going to be that much smaller on screen. And as a participant, that's fine. I think we can, I don't know that we have to be looking at the screen the entire time that somebody is speaking. And one of the things that will help reduce Zoom fatigue is if we just put on speaker mode or speaker view, rather than trying to look at the gallery and see what everybody else is doing all the time. What we end up looking at in the order of priorities, we look at ourselves, and then we look at other people, and then we look at the speaker. So as a participant, our responsibility really is just to look at the speaker, not the gallery. But if you're going to relax a little bit, that's fine. You're listening. It's actually pretty natural. I mean, we've all been in boardrooms. We've all been in meetings where there are multiple people around the table, and we're not all fixated on the speaker all at the same time. We're listening, but our body language and everything is clearly there to say we're listening and we're engaged in that way. So Ari, this is much better. Let's close your clamshell just a wee bit more. There we go. Yeah, that's better. Now, for all of you, I'd like you to go ahead and do your introduction, just as you did it before. There are two things I'd like you to do. One is I'd like you to look at the camera when you do it. And right before, I want you to consider the beat before you speak. And in that beat, I want you to think about your purpose. So just take a moment for yourself. What is the fire in your belly? Why do you do what you do? What's important to you about it? And then consider that. Take a breath, and then go ahead and talk to us, not to the monitor. And there's a clear distinction. We're only making really an inch of adjustment, but the way that it will impact your audience is huge. So we're going to make an inch of adjustment to have miles of impact. And so we're going to go in reverse order this time. So I think we ended with Ari. So Ari, if you'll go ahead and introduce yourself again, but this time I'd like you to look at the camera. If you need to take a minute and do a little sticky note so you know where you're supposed to look, that is a complete legal cheat. Feel free.
Hello, everybody. My name's Ariadne Albright. I go by Ari because sometimes that's a little easier. I'm the arts program coordinator here at Sanford Vermillion Medical Center, and also teach arts and health programming at the University of South Dakota.
Great. That was really, really well done. And
Was
here's,
there any difference?
oh, it was a huge difference because you're looking, it feels like you're looking at me now. So what is the impact you want to make? If you're looking at the monitor, you're looking at what feedback I might be giving you, which is more about you than about me. What you bring is you're a professional, you're credible, you're competent, and you're confident. You know this stuff. You can trust it. So now it's a matter of really the trick here is imagine somebody that you truly admire just on the other side of that camera. And that's who you're speaking to. And by doing that, you're going to have more impact when you're across the lens, when you're imagining that person whom you admire and you're speaking to them. So, all right, Roseanne, you're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roseanne Hoffland, and I'm the Director of Communications and Community Engagement for Levitt at the Falls. We are a nonprofit dedicated to building community through music, and we are going to kick off that mission this summer with 40 free concerts for the Sioux Falls community.
That's great. That was really well done. And I just want to know, both of you slowed down just a little bit. Now, granted, you know, first intro jitters, we speak a little faster, all of that. But you naturally, with that breath before, that beat before, that reconnection with purpose, it really helps to hone in on what your focus is and what you're trying to communicate. This is one of the advantages of being on camera. So Randy, you're next, man.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, everybody. My name is Randy Niles, and I am the Associate Director of the Black Hills Playhouse in Custer State Park. We are approaching our 75th anniversary season. And I have to say that it is an absolute joy telling, transforming lives through storytelling.
Great. Thank you for that, Randy. That was great. And you can see sometimes I'm looking at my monitor, so I'm watching you. And then sometimes I'm looking at my camera, and I've just made it a practice to call the audible because it's not a perfect system, right? But what I found is that if I were in Chicago O'Hare for some reason and it was busy and noisy and I was on a phone call, I'd call the audible. I just let people know I'm listening, I'm here. It's just a little noisy, and if I need to hear something again, I'll let you know. But apologize for the background noise. So let me just wrap up. Jim, you had mentioned somebody asked about my setup. I'm using a digital camera. It's really at the prosumer level. So I use a Canon M6 Mark II with a Sigma f1.4 lens. For those of you who aren't familiar with photography, the lens, the aperture, the f1.4 represents how wide the lens is open. And what that does for me, it does two things for me. One is it creates the blurry background. So what's referred to in photography world as a bokeh effect. And so it creates that blurry background. And the second thing that it does is it helps in terms of lighting. So it actually brings in more lighting. And what I'm able to accomplish then with my setup is I use lighting more for color and not necessarily for illumination. And so and then when you look at any kind of supplemental lighting that you may need, the best thing to do is make sure that you can adjust both the intensity of that light and the color spectrum of that light. It usually goes from like a yellow to blue. And so you just want to kind of make sure that you've got that functionality. You may have to spend a little bit more for that lighting or that ring light if you need it. But it's well worth having that flexibility. Let me give you a quick example of my setup. If I turn off that light, you can now see that I have light coming from my left And there's a couple light sources. I have some light seeping in through some white wooden blinds directly to my left. I also have a ring light. And I've turned off both of those. You can now see that my lens is bringing in only 2 ceiling lights that are more on the warm spectrum. So what I'm able to, so there's plenty, I mean, it's kind of amazing that the lens will bring in just those 2 lights with a little seepage from my blinds. Does it look okay? I'll just ask everybody who I can see, the panelists and Jim and Andrew, does it look okay to you, even without supplemental lighting?
It's okay. It's definitely better with the lighting, though.
It is a little better with the lighting. And so that's, so that's it with just, I call it a pumpkin light because it's a big diffuser around the lamp, and it looks like a giant pumpkin. And then if I use my ring light over here, it just helps with the diffusion. The diffusion actually helps make sure that I don't have any hard edges in terms of contrasts, but at the same time, you can clearly see some lines and differentiation between me and my background. And that's really what I'm trying to accomplish with that. So quick shout out. If any other questions from everybody on the webinar, and I'll open it up first to Randy, Roseanne, and Ari. Quick thank you to all 3 of you for being volunteers today. You did a great job, so congratulations. Any questions from the 3 of you that I can answer real quick?
I have one. I was just starting to put in the chat that I know I'm not live stream ready. I stay away from social media, but I use YouTube. What is the, I interrupt on meetings, and I do that when I'm excited, and I just wonder, what is the protocol? By the way, there's a lot of great content in this. I'm so glad that I attended. Do you have anything to say about it?
Yeah, I think the way that I do it, because I'm wired similarly. When I latch onto ideas like a dog on a bone, and I'm quick. When I'm quick with that, I think it's about breathing. Honestly, but particularly because it is a bit of a performance. So when you approach this as a nonfiction actor, and what's important about that is, actors, Randy can attest to this, you are to embody the character, right? So this is very much about the fiction that I'm someone else when I'm a professional actor or a community actor. But for us on Zoom calls, we're nonfiction actors. And so it's recognizing that my being there, listening, and taking that beat before I speak is really probably one of the most essential things, because it gives a little bit of thoughtfulness. And I think for folks like you and I, Ari, giving just a bit of space between when the idea has been spoken and our response allows for a little weight in the moment as well, right? And it's something we have to practice. I'm constantly practicing, but that would be my best thought, because it's the conversation. We want the conversation over all the brainstorming, if you would, right? It depends on the moment, depends on the purpose of the call. Does that help?
Very much so. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Patrick, one other question that I don't think we have time to fully address in the chat. or that came up in the Q&A, but a question from Carolyn, who mentioned that her home office sits in front of a picture window that doesn't have curtains, so she often has trouble with it washing out. She asks, would a digital camera help with this? Because she can't find ways to adjust her laptop camera. Real quick before your answer, I'll just say that on Mac, I found an app called Webcam Settings Panel that does allow you to adjust contrast, brightness, gain for many, not all, but many webcams that don't have that built in. And that has helped significantly when I'm just using my laptop. But I'll then let you answer in more detail.
Yeah, no, that's there are apps out there. If you get like a Logitech StreamCam or something like that, which is sort of what I would refer to as the upper level of a webcam, if you want to go the divide and conquer strategy. But if they have software that you can download and adjust your white point and luminosity, hue, saturation, all of that, which is really helpful. And I think that that's important. What I've found so far working with many clients is that the same technology will work differently depending on the space that it's in. They don't all work exactly the way that you think they should just because you've got the same technology. A digital camera isn't going to correct being backlit. And so if you're going to be backlit with a big picture window, you're going to just naturally have some challenges with that. And it's going to be hard unless you have enough lighting to be able to really get you looking good while at the same time having that backlit as your background. My recommendation is, if it were possible, to flip your desk. Utilize the picture window either at an angle or somewhat in front of you rather than necessarily behind you. One of the things I learned early on is when my desk was up against this wall. So I actually literally, in the beginning, March 2020, my desk was flat up against this wall, and you could see our family movie night chairs and the big screen TV, right? I figured out that to have control of what's in the frame, I just flipped my desk. I still take up the same amount of space as I did before with my chair and needing to be able to push back and everything like that. But that's made a big difference in terms of my control of what you all see in my background, because my laundry room is literally 10 feet that way. And it's kind of a tiny laundry room. So there might often be some baskets over there. Not anybody's fault. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus by saying that there are baskets of laundry outside of our laundry room. But there's a reason why you don't see that, because I framed this in a way so that you see what I want you to see. It's little movie magic, right?
Hey, Patrick, this is Jim.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add one thing. My desk, as my team so well knows, looks out two big windows, and if the sun's shining in, it's overwhelming. But we all have one of the best cameras you can buy right on our smartphone. It's amazing how good those cameras are. And there's an app that I purchased for like $6 or $5, one of those cheap apps in the App Store. It's called Epic Cam.
Yep.
And there's some reasons it's maybe not the best. It's maybe not as good as a digital camera for your, your computer, like a Logic Cam or whatever. But I will say that the camera meters light on my phone so much better than that cheap camera they put in the laptop. So
yes,
that corrected my problem. The camera seemed to adjust much better from my phone, the abundance of light that would hit my desk versus the laptop camera, which just wasn't able to do it. It would always wash me out.
Yeah. So you can do that. There's actually several ways you can adjust. You can use your phone. That's a great suggestion, because that's the only downside is you don't have your phone in your hand when it becomes your webcam. But it is one of the best cameras most of us have available. We'll see if this works. But you can see I have my phone up. I have it hardwired through a video capture card, and you can see the image quality of the selfie here And then if I want, I can go ahead and show you how I have things set up. Let's see, today. Oh, there we go. I'm trying to do too many things at the same time. But yeah, so the camera, your phone camera is a great suggestion, Jim.
Great. Well, we're kind of coming up on the end of the hour here. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to Patrick and Punchin for joining us today, and especially to Randy, Ari, and Roseanne for being such willing guinea pigs. We reached out to them last week to see if they'd be willing to jump on and do some work with the group. And so we're so thankful that the three of them were willing to join today. You'll get a follow-up email with a number of resources, including Patrick's information, the link to the recording of the session, and then also wanted to let everyone know that Patrick and his brother Mike McGowan, who we mentioned is a Broadway actor as well as television actor, will be doing a more in-depth session. They very kindly are collaborating with Art South Dakota. They're providing a discounted rate. We're able to cover some of it through some grant money, so it'll be about 30% of the normal cost. And Patrick can talk in more detail about it, but it's a full 2-hour session with 10 seats, limited to 10. So you get a very in-depth one-on-one session. And then Patrick follows up with an hour one-on-one, just the two of you without the full group. And then after that, another half-hour follow-up down the road. So you get a really great in-depth experience, not only getting more in-depth on the technology, but especially with Mike joining us. And I've had the pleasure of getting to perform with him when he played with the South Dakota Symphony many years ago now. But really, I think how to act on on camera for Zoom and how to really dial that up. So you'll see that link come to you as well in that email, and then we're opening that up to any of the arts community in South Dakota for those 10 seats. But we wanted to make sure you all see it first, so that you have the first chance to register for those open seats.
Yeah, no, that's great, Andrew. You said it very well. I really don't have anything to add. It's a lot of fun, very practical, inspirational, and you walk away having seen, you see immediate results in that 2-hour workshop, and then we start fine tuning things with those one-on-one sessions.
Great. And that link will come out to everybody in the follow-up email sent out later today, once the registration is open. So just thank you again, everyone, so much for joining us today. Please reach out to any of us at Art South Dakota at any time with questions, concerns, or ideas for future webinar sessions. We have a number coming up. The next session will be the 15th of this month, and it's one I'm really looking forward to. It's about Equitable Calls for Art, featuring Dr. Craig Howe from Cairns, as well as Kellen Boyce from the Sioux Falls Arts Council, talking through a couple of case studies of how they've handled culturally informed and equitable ways for soliciting calls for art. And then there's some other additional ones that are in process. We're looking at hopefully late May having a session with one of the employees of the South Dakota Department of Revenue and the Sales Tax Department to speak directly to the sales tax concerns for performers, artists, and arts organizations with state sales tax in South Dakota. So watch for that coming soon, and a number of other opportunities to come. So thank you again all so much for joining us today, and we will see you again soon.
Great. Thanks, everybody.